Lower Mississippi River ports.
Table of Contents, Lower Mississippi River ports.
All about ports on the Lower Mississippi River, with visiting and touring information, geography, history, attractions, and other points of interest.
Dr. Sidney Soclof. Dr. Sidney22@gmail.com. 2023. Narration by Dr. Sidney Soclof,
Zoe Phonemes,
and Nathan Koltove. For a complete discussion of YouTube navigation, please go to tiny.1/ytnavigator.
Chapter 1. Ports on the Lower Mississippi River. This shows the entire course of the Mississippi River, from the twin cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul all of the way down to New Orleans.
This is the Mississippi River, showing principal ports from the twin cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul all of the way down to New Orleans.
This is the Lower Mississippi River, showing principal ports from Memphis down to New Orleans.
This is the Upper Mississippi River, showing principal ports from the twin cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul down to Alton, Illinois and St. Louis, Missouri.
This is the Mississippi River between New Orleans and Baton Rouge.
Nottaway Plantation, also known as Nottaway Plantation House, is located near White Castle, Louisiana. The Plantation House is a Greek Revival and Italianate-styled mansion built by John Hamden Randolph in 1859. It is the largest extant antebellum plantation house in the South, with 53,000 square feet of floor space.
Nottaway Plantation is on the Great River Road. This is a collection of state and local roads that follow the course of the Mississippi River through the 10 states of Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, Illinois, Missouri, Kentucky, Tennessee, Arkansas, Mississippi, and Louisiana.
The River Road in Louisiana is the most well-known segment of the Great River Road. This fabled road extends for about 70 miles, or 110 kilometers, from Baton Rouge to New Orleans on both sides of the Mississippi River.
On each side of the river are antebellum plantation homes. There are also many industrial plants along the route.
The most unusual, and reportedly John Randolph's most favorite room in the house, is the White Ballroom. Randolph had it painted completely white, including the flooring, to show off the natural beauty of his 7 daughters, 6 of whom were married here.
This shows the location of Nottaway Plantation in a bend of the Mississippi River.
Chapter 3. Oak Alley was an antebellum sugarcane plantation. The classic Greek Revival antebellum mansion was named for a row of 300-year-old live oak trees that forms an 800-foot path leading to the Mississippi River.
This shows the location of the Oak Alley Plantation on the Louisiana River Road between New Orleans and Baton Rouge.
This is a view of the Oak Alley Plantation on the Mississippi River.
The Bonsager Plantation, as Oak Alley was originally named, was established to grow sugar cane by the French Creole Valcouraim when he purchased the land in 1830. Aim, known as the King of Sugar, was one of the wealthiest men in the South. The mansion was completed in 1839.
Baton Rouge is the capital of Louisiana and second largest city in the state after New Orleans. Baton Rouge has a city population of 222,000, with a metropolitan area population of 835,000.
Baton Rouge is a major industrial, petrochemical, medical, research, motion picture, and a growing technology center of the South. It is the location of Louisiana State University, the largest institution of higher education in the state.
The port of Greater Baton Rouge is the 10th largest in the United States in terms of tonnage shipped, and is the farthest upstream Mississippi River port capable of handling Panamax ships.
This is largely due to the Huey P. Long, O.K. Allen Bridge, which was intentionally constructed under the governorship of Huey Long at a low height, preventing big tankers from making their way upriver past Baton Rouge.
Baton Rouge owes its historical importance to its strategic site upon the Istrama Bluff, the first natural bluff upriver from the Mississippi River Delta at the Gulf of Mexico. This allowed development of a business quarter safe from seasonal flooding.
Baton Rouge was ruled by 7 different governments, French, British, and Spanish in the colonial era. The Republic of West Florida, as a United States territory and state, Confederate, and United States again since the end of the American Civil War.
The name Baton Rouge is from the French, meaning red stick. The French explorer Pierre Lemoyne d'Iberville led an exploration party up the Mississippi River in 1698. The explorers saw a reed pole marking the boundary between 2 tribal hunting grounds at the location of the future Baton Rouge.
The Louisiana State Capitol is the tallest capitol in the U.S. at 450 feet high with 34 floors. The building was completed in 1932.
This shows the location of the Louisiana State Capitol.
The building began as the dream of Governor Huey P. Long and became a symbol of pride, history and the spirit of the people of Louisiana. In 1935, Huey P. Long was assassinated in that building. He is buried on the grounds, and his statue faces the Capitol.
The old Louisiana State Capitol, also known as the State House, is a historic government building and is now a museum. It housed the Louisiana State Legislature from the mid-19th century until the current Capitol Tower building was constructed from 1929 to 1932.
The old Louisiana State Capitol was added to the National Register of Historic Places in 1973, and was designated a National Historic Landmark in 1974.
The old Louisiana State Capitol was built to both look and function like a castle, and has been nicknamed the Louisiana Castle, the Castle of Baton Rouge, and the Castle on the River.
This shows the location of the Louisiana Old State Capitol.
The old State Capitol building was restored in the 1990s. It was reopened as the Museum of Political History, with attractions and exhibits showcasing the building as an architectural treasure and highlighting historical artifacts. Included is a gallery featuring past state governors, including Huey P. Long.
The Louisiana State Museum, founded in New Orleans in 1906, is a statewide system of national historic landmarks and modern structures across Louisiana, housing thousands of artifacts and works of art reflecting Louisiana's legacy of historic events and cultural diversity.
The Capitol Park Museum is a branch of the Louisiana State Museum in Baton Rouge.
This shows the location of the Capitol Park Museum at 660 North 4th Street.
The Capitol Park Museum has exhibits on the history of Louisiana, It has two permanent exhibits, Grounds for Greatness, Louisiana, and The Nation and Experiencing Louisiana, Discovering the Soul of America.
The Louisiana Art and Science Museum is housed in a historic railroad depot on the banks of the Mississippi River.
This shows the location of the Louisiana Art and Science Museum at 100 South River Road in downtown Baton Rouge.
The Louisiana Art and Science Museum has art and science galleries, including an ancient Egypt gallery, the Irene W. Pennington Planetarium and ExxonMobil Space Theater.
The LSU Rural Life Museum is dedicated to the preservation and exhibition of materials from the cultures of 18th and 19th century rural Louisiana.
The LSU Rural Life Museum is a museum of Louisiana history on the Baton Plantation, a 40-acre agricultural research experiment station, and is operated under the aegis of the Louisiana State University.
The working plantation consists of 19th-century buildings, all authentically furnished to replicate activities of life on a typical 19th-century working plantation.
Louisiana folk architecture is a collection of buildings exemplifying the house types of Louisiana, illustrating the various cultures of Louisiana settlers.
The exhibit barn has exhibits on rural life up to the early 20th century.
The U.S.S. Kidd is a National Historic Landmark, and now a museum ship berthed on the Mississippi River in Baton Rouge. She is the only surviving U.S. destroyer still in a World War II configuration.
The U.S.S. Kidd, launched in 1943, was the first ship of the United States Navy to be named after Rear Admiral Isaac C. Kidd, who died on the bridge of his flagship U.S.S. Arizona during the 1941 Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor.
Admiral Kidd was the first U.S. flag officer to die during World War II, and the first American admiral ever to be killed in action.
The U.S.S. Kidd saw heavy action in World War II, participating in nearly every important naval campaign in the Pacific, winning 8 battle stars.
In 1951, the destroyer was deployed to Korean waters, where it won another 4 battle stars for service.
The U.S.S. Kidd arrived in Baton Rouge in 1982, and is now in public view as a museum vessel. She was never modernized, and is the only destroyer to retain its World War II appearance, having been restored to her August 1945 configuration and armament.
Her special mooring in the Mississippi River is designed to cope with the annual change in river depth, which can be up to 40 feet. For half the year she floats in the river, and is dry docked out of the water during the other half of the year.
This shows the location of the U.S.S. Kidd at 305 South River Road in Baton Rouge.
This is the campus of the Louisiana State University.
This shows the location of the Louisiana State University.
This is the Louisiana State University campus with Tiger Stadium in the foreground.
St. Francisville, Louisiana is a small town with a population of only 1,600, but with much history.
St. Francisville is at mile 265 above the mouth of the Mississippi River, which puts it 169 river miles upstream from New Orleans.
West Feliciana Parish is on the east bank of the Mississippi River, and the smallest of the Florida parishes. West Feliciana was established in 1824, when the old parish of Feliciana Spanish for Happy Land, was divided in half.
The early settlers of Feliciana arrived at the end of the 18th century and were mostly Anglo-Americans, although many were of French and Spanish descent. They resided along the Mississippi River, particularly in the St. Francisville area, where they grew and exported substantial amounts of tobacco.
After the Revolutionary War and the Treaty of 1795, offers by Spanish authorities attracted immigrants from West Florida and the western states to settle in the Feliciana district. Groups from the Carolinas, Georgia, and Virginia also relocated to the area.
West Feliciana Parish is home to the West Feliciana Railroad, which was chartered in 1831. It was the third oldest in the United States, but first to have a standard gauge railroad system.
West Feliciana is also home to the vast Louisiana State Penitentiary in Angola, 25 miles from St. Francisville. It is the only fully maximum security institution in the state.
The Louisiana State Penitentiary is also the largest maximum security prison in the United States, with 6,300 prisoners and 1,800 staff housing over 6,300 adult males, over 85% of whom are violent offenders. In addition, over half of the inmates in this prison are serving life sentences.
A substantial portion of the parish's economy is derived from the service of Louisiana State Penitentiary in Angola. Self-guided tours are available of the main museum building at the prison.
Tourists are attracted to antebellum cotton plantations in the historic town of St. Francisville, the parish seat of West Feliciana, and the third oldest settlement in Louisiana.
The second oldest incorporated town in Louisiana began as a burial ground. Spanish Capuchin monks established a church in the 1730s across the Mississippi River, where raging floodwaters often made burial impossible.
Soon the Spanish Capuchin monks began crossing the river to the dry highland bluffs to bury their dead. The settlement that developed around their graveyard took its name from their order's patron, St. Francis.
Late in the 18th century, the King of Spain issued land grants in Spanish West Florida to Anglo-American settlers. By 1785, their number led to the creation of the Distrito de Nueva Feliciana.
St. Francisville was developed around 1807 on a narrow ridge of loess, wind-blown glacial soil, giving the town the description of a town 2 miles long and 2 yards wide.
Below St. Francisville's bluffs, another early settlement called Bayou Cerro had been established by French colonists in the early 1790s.
Bayou Cerro was at one time the largest antebellum Mississippi River port between New Orleans and Memphis, but was superseded by Natchez.
The settlement of Bayou Cerro was gradually destroyed by repeated flooding and fires, and nothing exists of Bayou Cerro today. A few of its surviving structures were hauled up the hill into St. Francisville in the 1920s. Bayou Cerro began, and now ends as just a boat landing on the river.
St. Francisville reflects the character of the surrounding plantation country. It has been said that 2/3 of American millionaires in the antebellum decade lived on the plantations of the Great River Road from New Orleans to Natchez, and St. Francisville and West Feliciana Parish were home to many of them.
This is a walking tour map of St. Francisville. The Walk Through History Tour interprets over 140 structures that are on the National Register of Historic Places.
The West Feliciana Historical Society Museum has exhibits that interpret local history and tourist information, and brochures and guidebooks are available.
Since 1970, the West Feliciana Historical Society has been housed in this classical gable-fronted hardware store, built in 1895.
This is a map of the plantations near St. Francisville.
The Murals Plantation is a historic home and former antebellum plantation near St. Francisville. It was built in 1796 by General David Bradford and is said to be one of America's most haunted homes.
There are a variety of legends surrounding the Myrtles. The house is reputedly built over an Indian burial ground, and the ghost of a young Native American woman has been reported.
The Rosedown Plantation State Historic Site is a very large historic home and former plantation located near St. Francisville. It was built in 1835 by cotton planters Daniel and Martha Turnbull. Rosedown is one of the most intact plantation complexes in the South and is known for its extensive formal gardens.
This is Rosedown Plantation as viewed from the 660-foot oak tree alley. Rosedown is 2 miles from St. Francisville and has an estimated 50,000 visitors annually.
John James Audubon is the most famous visitor of West Feliciana Parish. Audubon became famous for his Birds of America series, 80 of which he painted in West Feliciana.
This shows the location of the Myrtles and Rosedown Plantation. Rosedown is 2 miles from St. Francisville, and the Myrtles is 1.3 miles.
St. Francisville was the capital of the short-lived Republic of West Florida.
The Republic of West Florida was an independent republic in the western region of Spanish West Florida that lasted for just over 2.5 months in 1810. It was annexed and occupied by the United States later in 1810 and then became part of eastern Louisiana.
This shows the Louisiana Purchase of 1803, and the Republic of West Florida extending from the Mississippi River to the Pearl River, which is the present boundary between Louisiana and the state of Mississippi.
The Republic of West Florida also had made claims eastward as far as the Perdido River, the present boundary between Alabama and Florida. Natchez is the county seat and only city of Adams County, Mississippi. Natchez has a population of 16,000.
Natchez is at mile 364 above the mouth of the Mississippi River, which puts it 268 river miles upstream from New Orleans. In the middle of the 19th century, Natchez attracted wealthy Southern planters as residents, who built mansions to fit their ambitions.
The plantations were vast tracts of land in the surrounding lowlands along the riverfronts of Mississippi and Louisiana. Large crops of cotton and sugar cane were grown using slave labor.
Natchez became the principal port from which these crops were exported, both upriver to northern cities and downriver to New Orleans, where much of the cargo was exported to Europe.
Many of the mansions built by planters before 1860 survived and form a major part of the city's architecture and identity.
The early planter elite built numerous antebellum mansions and estates. Many owned plantations in Louisiana, but chose to locate their homes on the higher ground across the river in Mississippi.
Prior to the Civil War, Natchez had more millionaires than any other city in the United States, making it arguably the wealthiest city in the nation at the time in 1850. Half of the millionaires in the U.S. lived here.
This is a map of Natchez.
The city of Natchez was named for the Natchez tribe of Native Americans, who with their ancestors, inhabited much of the area from the 8th century AD through the French colonial period.
Natchez was established by French colonists in 1716 to become one of the oldest and most important European settlements in the lower Mississippi River Valley.
After the French lost the French and Indian War, 7 Years' War, they ceded Natchez and near territory to Spain in the Treaty of Paris of 1763.
After the United States acquired the Natchez area from the British after the American Revolutionary War, Natchez served as the capital of the American Mississippi Territory, and then of the state of Mississippi.
More than 100 years later, in 1822, Jackson replaced Natchez as the capital, as being more centrally located in the state.
The strategic location of Natchez, on a bluff overlooking the Mississippi River, ensured that it would be a pivotal center of trade, commerce, and the interchange of ethnic Native American, European, and African cultures in the region.
Natchez is famous for its many antebellum mansions.
This shows the location of the many antebellum mansions in Natchez.
24 antebellum mansions, most of them private residences, open their doors to visitors during the 4-week Natchez pilgrimage every spring. The guides are costumed family friends and descendants of the original owners.
Stanton Hall is also known locally as Belfast House. It is one of the largest and most lavish antebellum mansions in the U.S. It was built by cotton grower Frederick Stanton in 1857 in the style of his Irish ancestral home, and, along with its beautiful grounds, covers an entire 2-acre city block.
This is the central area of Natchez, showing the location of Stanton Hall.
Longwood was constructed in 1858 by Dr. Holler Nutt, and is thought to be one of the largest octagonal houses in the U.S. This reed brick house with a large Byzantine-style dome is often referred to as Nutt's Folly.
Due to the advent of the Civil War in 1861, the interior was never completely finished, except for the family area on the first floor. The unfinished upper floors can also be toured to reveal the unique architectural styling.
This shows the location of Longwood, 2.5 miles from the center of Natchez.
The Melrose Estate at the Natchez National Historical Park is an example of antebellum-era Greek Revival architecture.
This shows the location of Melrose in the Natchez National Historical Park. It is 2 miles from the center of Natchez.
The Natchez National Historic Park deals with the cultural history of the town of Natchez and contains 3 important sites: Fort Rosalie, the William Johnson House, and the Melrose Plantation.
A first stop should be at the Natchez Visitor Center, which contains maps and attraction details, as well as a number of interesting exhibits, audio-visual displays, and a bookstore.
The Natchez Visitor Center is a Mississippi welcome center and home to the local offices of the National Park Service. Visit Natchez is also housed here, as well as Natchez Pilgrimage Tour.
The Natchez Visitor Center serves as a one-stop venue for tickets to tour the antebellum homes of Natchez, tickets to local events, and travel information in general.
The exhibits at the Natchez Visitor Center include a 20-minute movie about the history of Natchez and the surrounding area.
Fort Rosalie was built by the French in 1716 within the territory of the Natchez Native Americans, and it was part of the French colonial empire in the present-day city of Natchez.
Fort Rosalie was on a bluff overlooking the Mississippi River.
Is a picture of the Natchez Revolt of 1729, with Fort Rosalie in the background from a panoramic painting by John Egan, circa 1850.
Rosalie Mansion, also known as Our Lady on the Bluff for its stunning views over the Mississippi River, is on the site of the former French Fort Rosalie after which it is named.
Rosalie Mansion was built in the early 1820s, and is notable for having served as the regional headquarters for Union troops in 1863, during which much of the artifacts and furniture on display today were stored.
The William Johnson House at 210 State Street was constructed in 1840 and was the residence of the free black man, William Johnson. Known also as the Barber of Natchez, Johnson constructed his home from the bricks of other buildings destroyed in the tornado of 1840.
Today the William Johnson House is part of the National Historical Park of Natchez. It is open 7 days a week, and free to the public.
William Johnson acquired several buildings in Natchez, 2,000 acres of land, and several slaves. He gained the respect of leading citizens of the time, some of whom he loaned money to, and local papers eulogized him after his untimely death.
William Johnson kept a diary for almost 16 years, from 1835 until his death in 1851. It is the lengthiest and most detailed personal narrative authored by an African American during the antebellum era in the U.S.
Johnson's diary evolved into an extraordinary record of social, economic, and political life in his hometown of Natchez, as seen through the eyes of a free African American.
The Grand Village of the Natchez, also known as the Fatherland Site, is a 128-acre site encompassing a prehistoric indigenous village and earthwork mound south of present-day Natchez.
The village complex was constructed starting about 1200 BC by members of the prehistoric Plaque Mine culture. They built the 3 platform mounds in stages. Another phase of significant construction work by these prehistoric people has been dated to the mid-15th century.
This shows the location of the Grand Village of the Natchez, 4 miles south of the city of Natchez.
The African American Museum of History and Culture contains exhibits from a number of Natchez-related African American historic sites, important citizens and events.
Other exhibits within the museum include the Rhythm nightclub fire, where over 200 African American Natchez citizens were either burned or trampled to death, and Forks of the Road, which was the second largest slave market in the South.
The Natchez Under the Hill area once contained all of Natchez, which was about 20 buildings at the time of the U.S. Revolutionary War. Gradually houses were built on the bluffs above. An upper town emerged, and eventually the center of Natchez shifted.
This shows Natchez, Fort Rosalie, and the bridge across the Mississippi River to Vidalia, Louisiana.
Natchez under the Hill was the lawless underbelly of the city of Natchez. The city itself was located on top of the bluff, and was inhabited by wealthy cotton planters who capitalized on the fertile agricultural lands.
Natchez under the Hill, known formerly as Natchez Landing, was the city's port, which was isolated below on the banks of the river.
While the city atop the bluff had a gracious southern culture, Natchez Landing was a rough river town. Nevertheless, Natchez under the Hill was important for the city above because it was the principal port for cotton, as well as for imports.
Natchez is recognized particularly for its role in the development of the Old Southwest during the first half of the 19th century. It was the southern end of the historic Natchez Trace, with the northern end being Nashville, Tennessee.
Because of the strong current of the Mississippi River, it was not until steam-powered vessels were developed in the 1820s that travel northward on the river could be accomplished by large boats.
So, after unloading their cargoes in Natchez or New Orleans, many pilots and crew of flatboats and keelboats traveled by the Natchez Trace overland to their homes in the Ohio River Valley.
This shows some of the places and towns developed along the Natchez Trace before the 1830s.
The Natchez Trace also played an important role during the War of 1812. Today the modern Natchez Trace Parkway, which commemorates this route, still has its southern terminus in Natchez.
A good way to see the major points of interest of Natchez, especially for the first-time visitor, is a hop-on hop-off bus tour. One such tour is offered by City Sightseeing.
This is a map of the City Sightseeing Natchez hop-on hop-off double-decker bus tour. To tour the entire loop on the bus takes 2 hours.
1-day and 2-day tickets are available, each offering unlimited hop-on hop-off of the tour buses, from Tuesday through Sunday from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m.
These are points of interest on the route of the City Sightseeing Natchez hop-on hop-off double-decker bus tour.
Vicksburg is an historic city, located on a high bluff on the east bank of the Mississippi River across from Louisiana. Vicksburg is the county seat of Warren County, Mississippi, and has a population of 24,000.
Vicksburg is at mile 437 above the mouth of the Mississippi River, and 341 river miles upstream from New Orleans.
Vicksburg was initially built by French colonists in 1719, and later the outpost withstood an attack from the native Natchez people. It was incorporated as Vicksburg in 1825 and named after a Methodist missionary, Nuit Vic.
Vicksburg was a key Confederate river port during the Civil War, and its surrender to Ulysses S. Grant in July 1863 marked a turning point of the war. Vicksburg then had a troubled history of racial conflict, extending well into the 20th century.
This is a map of the central area of Vicksburg.
The Vicksburg Heritage Walking Trails allows visitors to experience the history of Vicksburg on 5 different routes, featuring 35 markers placed throughout the downtown and historic districts.
This is a view of the central area of Vicksburg.
The Old Courthouse Museum originally served as the courthouse for Warren County. Built in 1861. It stands prominently on the hill in Vicksburg, and was a symbol of Confederate resistance during the Siege of Vicksburg.
In 1948, the old courthouse was reopened as a museum operated by the Vicksburg and Warren County Historical Society with exhibits on local history,
This is Temple B'nai Israel in Vicksburg, built in 1905.
Anshuka is also known as the Victor Wilson House. It is a historic Greek Revival house in Vicksburg. The name is purported to mean happy home in the Choctaw language.
The Beatonhorn Coca-Cola Museum is a restored building where Coca-Cola was first bottled in 1894. It contains a soda fountain and memorabilia.
The Beatonhorn Coca-Cola Museum has a wide variety of exhibits interpreting the beginnings of Coca-Cola, the history of the Beatonhorn family, the process used to first bottle Coca-Cola, and a reproduction of the equipment first used to bottle Coke.
The Beatonhorn Coca-Cola Museum also exhibits the history of Coca-Cola advertising and Coca-Cola memorabilia from the past to the present.
This shows the location of the Beatonhorn Coca-Cola Museum, as well as the Old Courthouse Museum, the Old Depot Museum, and the Lower Mississippi River Museum in Vicksburg.
The Lower Mississippi River Museum and Riverfront Interpretive Site provides visitors a view of life surrounding the mighty Mississippi River through multiple interactive displays.
This shows the location of the Lower Mississippi River Museum and the Old Depot Museum with respect to the steamboat landing in Vicksburg.
Visitors can learn about the river's past, the science behind water movement, view an aquarium, walk through an outdoor flood model, and tour the Mississippi River Commission's towboat, the motor vessel Mississippi 4.
The Lower Mississippi River Museum is the first of its kind in the U.S. as it is the only museum to maintain and house a fully restored, dry-docked riverboat.
The Lower Mississippi River Museum exhibits include an orientation theater offering visitors a look into how life on the Mississippi has changed over the years, and displays on the Great Mississippi Flood of 1927, the most destructive flood in the history of the U.S.
The Lower Mississippi River Museum has an aquarium with fish native to the Mississippi River, and a Mississippi River flood model to examine factors that affect the flow of the river.
The Old Depot Museum has housed what was formerly a depot for the Yazoo and Mississippi Valley Railroad that had 28 passenger and freight trains a day in the early 1950s.
The exhibits in the Old Depot Museum include the Battle of Vicksburg and many other elements of the city's history, including a diorama of the Siege of Vicksburg.
There are also railroad memorabilia, model railroad layouts, and models of architectural styles employed throughout the past years of Vicksburg.
The Vicksburg National Military Park preserves the site of the Civil War Battle of Vicksburg, waged from March 29 to July 4, 1863. The park also commemorates the Vicksburg campaign which led up to the battle.
This shows the location of the Vicksburg National Military Park on the outskirts of the city.
Reconstructed forts and trenches commemorate the 47-day siege that ended in the surrender of the city. Victory here and at Port Hudson further south in Louisiana, as well as earlier success at New Orleans, gave the Union control of the entire length of the Mississippi River. Reconstructed forts and trenches commemorate the 47-day siege that ended in the surrender of the city. Victory here and at Port Hudson further south in Louisiana, as well as earlier success at New Orleans, gave the Union control of the entire length of Mississippi River.
Vicksburg was the key to the control of the entire Mississippi River. The capture of Vicksburg would essentially split the Confederacy in half. The city was located on a high bluff on the east side of the river, and its batteries controlled passage on the river. Union control of Vicksburg was therefore crucial.
Abraham Lincoln said, "Vicksburg is the key. The war can never be brought to a close until the key is in our pocket." Confederate President Jefferson Davis held that Vicksburg is the nailhead that holds the South's two halves together.
The marshy land to the north of Vicksburg made an assault on the city from that direction very difficult.
The solution was for the Union troops under General Ulysses S. Grant to cross the river some distance south of Vicksburg. To provide transportation of the troops across the river, the Mississippi River Squadron under Admiral David Dixon Porter ran the Confederate blockade at Vicksburg on April 16, 1863.
In early June, the Union Army of the Tennessee under the command of Maj. General Ulysses S. Grant went south through Arkansas across from Vicksburg. On April 30, 1863, they crossed the Mississippi River 30 miles below Vicksburg with the aid of Porter's boats.
Grant's Union Army of the Tennessee then waged a campaign to isolate Vicksburg with the battles of Port Gibson, Raymond, and then east to capture the Mississippi capital of Jackson.
The Union then turned west, and after battles at Champion Hill and Big Black River, pushed Pemberton's Confederate Army back into Vicksburg itself.
Pemberton's Confederate Army was pushed back into Vicksburg, where they hoped to hold out until reinforcements could arrive.
Grant's army surrounded Pemberton and outnumbered him 2-1. On May 19 and 22, Grant launched a series of frontal assaults against Pemberton's fortifications, which were in a 7-mile ring surrounding the city.
After suffering heavy losses, and finding it desirable that no more loss of life shall be sustained, Grant decided to lay siege to the city on May 25. For 47 days, the Union forces bombarded the city, while the Confederate soldiers and civilians alike suffered hardships of siege warfare.
Pemberton had no reinforcements coming, and food and supplies were nearly gone. After holding out for more than 40 days, Pemberton finally surrendered on July 4, 1863.
With the loss of Pemberton's army at Vicksburg and the Union victory at Port Hudson 5 days later, the Union controlled the entire Mississippi River and the Confederacy was effectively split in half. This success increased Grant's reputation and ultimately led to his appointment as General-in-Chief of the Union armies. Grant's 6-week Vicksburg campaign in June and July of 1863 is considered to be one of the most brilliant of the war. The surrender of Vicksburg came just one day after the end of another pivotal battle, that of Gettysburg from July 1 to July 3 of 1863.
The gunboat, U.S.S. Cairo, was one of the first American ironclad warships built at the beginning of the Civil War. It was the lead ship of the City-class gunboats and named for Cairo, Illinois.
This shows the location of the U.S.S. Cairo gunboat and museum in the Vicksburg National Military Park. This shows the location of the U.S.S. Cairo gunboat and museum in the Vicksburg National Military Park.
In June 1862, the U.S.S. Cairo captured the Confederate garrison of Fort Pillow on the Mississippi, enabling Union forces to occupy Memphis. She was sunk in December 1862.
The remains of the U.S.S. Cairo can be viewed at Vicksburg National Military Park, together with a museum of its weapons and naval stores.
The Vicksburg Riverfront Murals project is a series of murals painted on Mississippi River flood walls. The murals are intended to depict Vicksburg's historical significance, as well as its envisioned future role in the region's commerce and culture.
The first series of 32 panels measuring 12 by 20 feet along the flood wall facing Levee Street was started in 2002.
Greenville is at mile 537 above the mouth of the Mississippi River, and 441 river miles upstream from New Orleans.
Greenville has a population of 34,400 and is the county seat of Washington County, Mississippi.
Greenville is located in the area of historic cotton plantations and culture known as the Mississippi Delta. This is the area in northern Mississippi between the Mississippi River and the Yazoo River. The Mississippi Delta is not to be confused with the delta of the Mississippi River south of New Orleans where the river enters the Gulf of Mexico.
The Mississippi Delta, also known as the Yazoo-Mississippi Delta, is the distinctive northwest section of the state of Mississippi, and some portions of Arkansas and Louisiana, which lies between the Mississippi and Yazoo rivers.
The Mississippi Delta region has been called the most southern place on Earth, in the sense of epitomizing the region of the American South because of its unique racial, cultural, and economic history.
The Mississippi Delta is 200 miles long and 87 miles across at its widest point, encompassing almost 7,000 square miles of alluvial floodplain. It was originally covered in hardwood forest across the bottomlands, but was developed as one of the richest cotton-growing areas before the Civil War.
The Mississippi Delta attracted many speculators who developed land along the riverfronts for cotton plantations. They became wealthy planters who were dependent on the labor of black slaves, who comprised a vast majority of the population before the Civil War, often being twice the number of whites.
This shows Greenville located on the eastern bank of Lake Ferguson, an oxbow lake left from an old channel of the Mississippi River.
One floating casino is located on the lake near the downtown area known as the Tro Casino Greenville, with a second just west of the city near the Greenville Bridge known as Harlow's Casino Resort.
Greenville was destroyed during the Civil War. Troops from a Union gunboat burned every building in retaliation for being fired upon. When the war ended, Greenville was in a state of ruin.
The former residents soon decided to build again, and chose a new site 3 miles away, at the highest point on the Mississippi River between the towns of Vicksburg and Memphis.
The major part of the area selected was within property owned by Mrs. Harriet Blanton Theobald, who welcomed the idea of a new Greenville. She donated land for schools, churches and public buildings, and became known as the Mother of Greenville.
Greenville recovered prosperity, still based on cotton, despite the decline in world markets for this commodity.
Several residences and other buildings from the late 19th and early 20th centuries have been listed on the National Register of Historic Places. It was a center of Delta culture in the early 20th century.
This is a view of Greenville.
This is another view of Greenville.
The 1927 Flood Museum is housed in the oldest structure in downtown Greenville. This museum presents the history of one of the greatest natural disasters this country has ever known.
On April 21, 1927, the levee, 8 miles north of Greenville, broke due to the pressure from the swollen Mississippi River and created the greatest single crevasse ever to occur anywhere on the river.
Actual flood artifacts and photographs illustrate the flood's impact. During the 4 months Greenville and the Mississippi Delta were inundated. A 12-minute documentary film illustrates the Great Flood of 1927.
This is downtown Greenville in 1927, 6 days after the levee break.
These are flood refugees on the levee in Greenville.
This shows the location of the 1927 Flood Museum, Greenville History Museum, Hebrew Union Temple, St. Joseph's Catholic Church, and the William Alexander Percy Memorial Library in Greenville.
The Greenville History Museum is at 409 Washington Avenue. It provides a look into life in Greenville from the late 1800s through the 1970s.
The Greenville History Museum has a collection of memorabilia, artifacts, photographs, and news clippings of the historic 1927 flood, and other important events.
The Great River Road parallels the Mississippi River from Minnesota to Louisiana. The River Road Queen Welcome Center and Museum of the Delta serves as the State Welcome Center, and resembles the Victorian riverboats that once ruled the mighty Mississippi.
This unique structure originally served as the State of Mississippi exhibit at the 1984 New Orleans World's Fair. Today it is also home to unique Delta exhibits, including nationally renowned writers.
This shows the location of the River Road Queen Welcome Center, 3 miles southwest of the center of Greenville on Highway 82 west at Reed Road.
Temple Israel, Hebrew Union Temple, in Greenville was built in 1906.
Temple Israel, Hebrew Union Temple, is at 504 Main Street in Greenville.
The Hebrew Union Temple houses the Century of History Museum, which exhibits the contributions and culture of Greenville's Jewish residents since 1867. Important memorabilia as well as stories and photographs are displayed here.
St. Joseph's Catholic Church of Greenville was built in 1907.
This is the interior of St. Joseph's Catholic Church, showing the beautiful stained glass windows imported from Munich, Germany.
Greenville boasts more published writers per capita than any other town in the nation. Greenville's extraordinary literary tradition has shaped more writers than any town of its size in the country in the 20th century. More than 100 published writers called Greenville home.
Shelby Foote, historian, novelist, narrator, and writer of the widely acclaimed PBS Civil War series, was born here. Poet and biographer William Alexander Percy, novelists Walker Percy, Ellen Douglas and Beverly Lowry, and PBS commentator Harding Carter III also grew up here.
William Faulkner was a frequent visitor, an occasional resident, when another Greenville author, Ben Wasson, served as this Nobel Prize winner's literary agent.
Harding Carter III won the Pulitzer Prize as editor of the Greenville Delta Democrat-Times.
Bern Keating is Greenville's most prolific penman, with more than 24 books and hundreds of articles in publications, ranging from National Geographic to Playboy.
The Percy Library Writers exhibit in the William Alexander Percy Memorial Library at 341 Main Street is open to the public and contains artifacts chronicling Greenville's rich literary heritage.
William Alexander Percy, 1885 to 1942, was a lawyer, planter, and poet from Greenville. His autobiography Lanterns on the Levee, 1941, became a bestseller.
William Alexander Percy was a friend of Herbert Hoover from the Belgium relief effort during the early years of World War I. Percy was put in charge of relief during the Great Flood of 1927.
During the 1927 flood, thousands of black people fleeing farms and plantations underwater sought refuge on the levee in Greenville. Percy believed that the refugees needed to be evacuated to Vicksburg to receive better care and food, and arranged for ships to prepare to remove them.
The E.E.-based Cultural Arts Center houses the Greenville Arts Council, established in 1983 with the mission to promote the rich cultural heritage of the region.
The E.E.-based Cultural Arts Center features a 1901 Armitage Herschel carousel. This was built in 1894 and brought to Greenville in 1901. The carousel is a primitive country-style carousel with 24 horses and 4 chariots. It is one of the 2 oldest working Armitage Herschel carousels in the country.
Memphis.
Memphis is at mile 736 above the mouth of the Mississippi River, and 640 river miles upstream from New Orleans.
This is a map of Memphis.
This is a map of downtown Memphis.
This is another map of downtown Memphis.
The last line of the Memphis original streetcar network closed in 1947. The new downtown trolley began service in 1993, and after service was suspended in 2014, was reopened in 2018 with 3 lines: Main Street Line, Riverfront Loop and Madison Avenue Line.
This is a map of the Memphis MTA trolley system.
Graceland is a mansion once owned by Elvis Presley. His daughter, Lisa Marie Presley, has been the owner of Graceland since the passing of her father.
Graceland is at 3764 Elvis Presley Boulevard, about 9 miles from downtown Memphis, and less than 4 miles north of the Mississippi state line.
Graceland was opened to the public as a museum in 1982, listed in the National Register of Historic Places in 1991, and declared a National Historic Landmark in 2006.
Graceland is the second most visited house in the country after the White House, with over 650,000 visitors a year.
This is Elvis Presley's final resting place on the grounds at Graceland.
This is the grave of Elvis Presley.
Elvis purchased a 1958 Convair 880 in 1975, and named it Lisa Marie after his daughter. He spent more than $800,000 having the jet remodeled.
This shows the location of Graceland. It is 9 miles south of Memphis on State Highway 55, also known as Elvis Presley Boulevard.
Beale Street is a street in downtown Memphis, which runs from the Mississippi River to East Street, a distance of 1.8 miles. It is a significant location in the city's history, as well as in the history of the blues.
Today, the blues clubs and restaurants that line Beale Street are major tourist attractions in Memphis.
This shows the location of Beale Street.
This is Beale Street as it was in 1974.
This is the National Civil Rights Museum at the Lorraine Motel where Martin Luther King Jr. was shot in 1968, and now occupied by the National Civil Rights Museum.
This shows the location of the National Civil Rights Museum a short distance south of Beale Street, at 406 Mulberry Street.
The National Civil Rights Museum traces the history of the civil rights movement. The centerpiece is the hotel room and balcony on which King was killed.
The museum includes a number of displays, including artifacts from the Brown vs. Board of Education of Topeka case and the Montgomery bus boycott.
The Mississippi River Park and Museum on Mud Island has 18 galleries that show 10,000 years of the history of the lower Mississippi Valley, from early exploration and settlement, transportation, disasters along the river, and the evolution of music.
The Mississippi River Museum is the central attraction of this family park, with its excellent galleries, and a reproduction of the 1870 steamboat. Other highlights include the Hall of River Music and a collection of native artifacts.
The River Walk is a 3/4-mile-long model, showing the course of the Mississippi, all the way from Cairo, Illinois, to the Gulf of Mexico.
At the scaled-down Gulf of Mexico end of the River Walk, visitors can hop aboard a pedal boat and relax on the water while enjoying views of the Memphis skyline.
This is a map showing Mud Island and the Mississippi River Park and Museum.
The Mud Island monorail connects downtown Memphis with the Mud Island River Park. It is about 0.3 miles long, and opened in 1982. It operates only from April through October. The two stations are at the Convention Center on Front Street, and at the Mississippi River Museum on the island. The Mud Island monorail connects downtown Memphis with the Mud Island River Park. It is about 0.3 miles long, and opened in 1982. It operates only from April through October. The two stations are at the Convention Center on Front Street, and at the Mississippi River Museum on the island.
Sun Studio in Memphis is famous as the recording facility where Elvis Presley, Johnny Cash, Jerry Lee Lewis, B.B. King, and Roy Orbison began their careers.
The studio itself is still used by recording artists, with recent recordings being made by John Mellencamp and Chris Isaak. A free shuttle service is available from Graceland and the Rock and Soul Museum.
This shows the location of the Sun Studio at 706 Union Avenue in Memphis.
The Peabody Memphis is a downtown luxury hotel. The hotel is known for the Peabody ducks that live on the hotel rooftop and make daily treks to the lobby.
This shows the location of the Peabody Hotel on Union Avenue in downtown Memphis.
The original Peabody Hotel was built in 1869.
The current Peabody Hotel is an Italian Renaissance structure. Construction began less than a month after the old hotel closed and opened in 1925. After a $25 million renovation, it reopened in 1981 and is widely considered a major factor in the revitalization of the downtown area.
The Peabody is probably best known around the world for a custom dating back to the 1930s. The general manager, Frank Shutt, had just returned from a weekend hunting trip, and he and his friends found it amusing to leave their live decoy ducks in the hotel fountain.
The hotel guests loved the idea, and since then, Ducks have played in the fountain every day from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m.
FedEx Express, formerly Federal Express, is a cargo airline based in Memphis in 2017. It was the world's largest airline in terms of freight tons flown and the world's 9th largest in terms of fleet size, delivering packages and freight to more than 375 destinations in nearly every country each day.
The FedEx headquarters are in Memphis, with its global super hub located at Memphis International Airport.
The climate of Memphis.
Will it be hot or will it be cold in Memphis?
Here are the average high and low temperatures in degrees Fahrenheit throughout the year in Memphis.
Here are the average high and low temperatures in degrees Celsius throughout the year in Memphis.
The daytime temperatures in the summer months are very warm, 85 to 91 degrees Fahrenheit. At night, the temperatures drop to a more comfortable 69 to 71 degrees Fahrenheit.
The daytime temperatures in the winter months are chilly, 48 to 52 degrees Fahrenheit. At night, the temperatures drop to a cold 31 to 35 degrees Fahrenheit.
Rainfall in Memphis.
Here is the average rainfall in inches throughout the year in Memphis. The total yearly rainfall is 52 inches, or 1328 millimeters.
Here is the average rainfall in millimeters throughout the year in Memphis.
Here is the average number of days per month with precipitation throughout the year in Memphis. We see that it rains about 9 days every month throughout the year.
Recommended videos: Lower Mississippi River ports.
Recommended video: The Great Mississippi Flood of 1927, a brief documentary.
Recommended video: Baton Rouge, Louisiana, the top 10 places you need to see.
Recommended video: St. Francisville, Louisiana Mine Street Roadshow.
Recommended video: 17 best things to do in Natchez, Mississippi.
Recommended video: Visit Natchez, Mississippi, make memories.
Recommended video: Grant, massive siege of Vicksburg leads to Union victory.
Recommended video: Top 14 Best Tourist Attractions in Vicksburg, Mississippi.
Recommended video: 15 top attractions in Memphis 2022.
Recommended video: 14 things to do in Memphis, Tennessee.
YouTube navigation.
Table of contents: Lower Mississippi River ports.
Thanks for watching. Please watch some more of my great videos.